GM fam, or for many of us, GN. It's not yet Friday where I'm at, but on Fridays we like to have llama parties, which means we kick back, we have a beverage, we have a good time, and talk with some people. And the only way that it could work out is to get this particular guest, who I've been hoping to have on for a really, really, really long time, and it's finally happening. Was if I caved and I did it Thursday my time to accommodate his busy, busy, busy life. Um, but it worked out. So we are going to be having an outstanding llama party for the ages. It's going to be probably one of the best ones we've had yet. So anyone who's watching it live on X or YouTube, because it's not our normal time slot, let's go ahead and share that and get the viewership like way up. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick couple of shout outs to winners of last week's auction. So this gorgeous QR code here will take you to Curve Llama Land, special beta version of it. And what I think is cool about this is Curve doesn't pay for marketing. This is just Curve fans that chipped in to buy the QR code for this week's rights because they're such big fans of Curve. So, if you're bored listening to us yammer, click that link and check it out. And if you don't like Curve, then head to our auction site where you can bid on next week's QR code and replace it. Also, a big shout out to the winner of last week's Squid Pass, which is, let's get that up and... It is not a random string of numbers. It is Switzerland. If you're going to be in Switzerland from May 1st to May 26th and looking for some Zuzulu type vibes, make sure to check out Switzerland. So with my relentless shilling out of the way, let me go ahead and turn back to a different form of relentless shilling, which is that I have been working so hard to capture like interviews with the people who work at Curve, who are sometimes difficult to pin down. And Benny, if I'm not mistaken, you are working part-time, full-time, no time, but just contributing. Like, what's your relationship with Curve officially?
So I guess I'm now employed by SwissStake, which is, I guess, the main subcontractor for development for the DAO. So I still do a bit.
I'm happy to call you Curve if you feel like you identify as Curve.
Yeah, I mean it's a DAO, right? Like anybody's free to identify as a Curve contributor.
Exactly.
So I guess
people who
that
bought this
works.
pass.
Yeah. So yeah, and like the hours are, I guess, flexible. So it depends on, with the I do a bit of work for trying to help Viper resupply launched this week, and we've been working a bit with them. So yeah, like sometimes I don't get the time to work full time, but that's hopefully where it's headed.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to complain too much if you're helping out Viper, helping out Resupply. I think those are boosting the broader Llama ecosystem. So at least if it comes from me, I'd say you're okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's really nice to be working in that ecosystem because there's such sort of, I don't know, alignment. Like it's really nice to work with people that have the best interest of the other projects at heart and to see it all come together. And like with the launch of Resupply, for example, like seeing how it's benefiting Curve and the lending products that Curve has been trying to push is really heartening.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is really wild about it is we have seen the markets in the past few years become the most PvP you could possibly get. Like everyone is trying to like eat each other. And somehow this like broader flywheel for the most part has not been turning into a circular firing squad. So I've been very impressed to see the building energy that's been coming out of the kind of the broader flywheel.
Yeah. I think it's like I don't know if we were lucky, we were spared the bull market. And so like all the contributors that remain and the community members, like that nobody's here for the price action anymore, maybe. And so people just decided like we're going to focus on building, on making things better, on developing partnerships with new chains that are launching, new protocols. And so far, maybe the price action doesn't necessarily follow, but I'd say if you look at the way that Curve has grown, the new products that are being shipped, I think it's definitely been a very positive couple of years for Curve.
Oh, I 100% agree. And it it was like a few months back, like I think it was like just after the election when like there was this like really short like miniature bull market where things were going up, and we started to see the problems of the bull market coming in, right? Like the scammers and the fraudulent like stuff, and like just the moon boys. And I was like, I'd almost forgotten it. I almost memory hold what it was like to have a bull market, and it's not as good as people hope because like you have all these problems. So well, thankfully macro conditions mean we don't have to worry about it for some time. Maybe never. Might never
I
see
mean,
it.
price going up is always a good problem to have, right? Like a lot of people might be willing to put up with the Moon Boys, but I think what may have been, and you've probably seen it. What I guess also got me worried, not necessarily about Curve, because I think our contributors are like committed enough that it didn't really affect us. But you'd see some pretty prominent Ethereum people, like very, like highly respected developers that, and you could sense that they were getting tired of all the grift. Um, and I think there's something fundamentally right, like more, even more than disappointing when you see projects that have been building for years that are pushing the space forwards, that are making great, technical contributions, and they just don't seem to be getting any love or attention, and not necessarily just in terms of price. And then you see like all of the meme coin hype and AI agents projects that really like the white paper looks like it was written by like some like GPT-2, not even like a recent version. And yet people still claim that this is the future. I guess it does make you doubt what the industry is really trying to push forward. But yeah.
Yeah, I very much hear that. I very much hear that. And yeah, it's what's also funny about it is like for the first time since I've been following Curve, most of the time like following Curve has made me like a pariah because like everyone was like hating on Curve completely irrationally, in my opinion, for like so much time. And it's only like the past like maybe month or so that like all of a sudden Curve, like I open up the timeline and people are uniformly like bullish on Curve. Um, but of course, Curve only gets its bull run at a time where everything's going down. So it's just like its bull run as it goes down less than everything else is the funny thing.
Yeah. And I guess with the fee distribution and the protocol growing, like one advantage, or I think like what we're seeing also this cycle for older projects, like I mean, Ava, I would say is in the same. I mean, they've had better price action, but I think like revenue, network effects, fundamentals are also like older projects are starting to get valued more on fundamentals, and so of course it's not as good for the pump. But if you're in it for the long term, I think it's a lot more bullish because you're realizing that the value accrual is going to come from adoption, from the DAO actually making money from the products that people are willing to use and pay for. And I think right, like Curve is really in that phase where we're trying to mature the project in terms of our offering, in terms of how like we try to understand our users and reach out to them, in terms of how we deal with our finances, and our code base. Like there's a lot of work that's like there was just a forum post recently on the governance forum where someone was complaining about how we need a Doge for Curve to like keep the devs in check because we don't know what they're doing. Um, and like it's probably just trolling, but it's true that a lot of the improvements, like there's a lot of dev work that's been done, and I think we're like one of the top like repos for developer activity in DeFi. There's a tremendous amount of work that's being done that's not super visible. Like it doesn't result in shiny new features, but it's taking care of technical debt. It's making small incremental improvements over the basic tech that we have to give better user experience, to make sure that our markets are safer, they're better monitored. And so all of the things, they're not impressive in themselves, or like we try and version our contracts better so that we can keep track of if there's ever a bug, what's going to be affected. So none of it is really easy to sell. Like they're not marketing selling points, but I think they're very, very important for the future of the protocol, and they're going to allow us to really scale once DeFi adoption ramps up.
Yeah, very much so. Here's that up only chart of the dev activity on Curve Finance, which is really, really quite impressive. And Curve has done a better job since the launch of the news site of kind of having an official place to get the story out. But like you highlighted, even then, when you're talking about like the official story, it usually tends to cluster around like the kind of big features that package nicely into a story. So oftentimes, like for example, like an L2 launch, which takes a couple of minutes because we have the code. Oh shoot, we lost Benny. I guess he was not a fan of my relentless curve shilling, but I'll just go ahead and do it even without Benny. So even without the like being able to like see the full like effect of what's going on, Benny just confirms to me in chat he's gonna be back in just a minute. So basically, like when Benny gets back, I'm going to ask him about like a lot more of the activity that's been going on at Curve because a lot of it's interesting. And Benny also being a super contributor to Viper as well as Resupply, which I'd like to get his thoughts on. Um, he's in a really good position to not only like explain it, but he's got like a fantastic like sense of humor, as you've probably already seen. Just really great person to talk to. So he's gonna be able to translate this in a way that's going to be really fun. So hopefully we're going to get a chance to talk about some of the upgrades. Viper has been doing a fantastic job lately of it really like we'll get to some of the developments there. Curve also is where I'm going to hopefully start. And excellent, Benny, sir, welcome back.
Sorry, I am still on mute. Is this okay?
You're great. You're great.
All right. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. Just browser crashed for a second.
No, it happens. Like back in the like you're too like young to remember this. Back when people watched TV, like they'd have like a screen that went up that said "Warning: Technical difficulties. Please stand by." I should get one of those made so that I don't have to sit there and vamp because the few hundred people we got watching this are probably not entertained.
Yeah. I do remember those, like the little like collar wheel or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, you were about to talk about Curve specifically. I think we should start with Curve, and then we can branch out to like Resupply and Viper and stuff like that. But you've been working on a lot of projects. One of them I wanted to ask you about was the fee distributor. Is that something that we could like pick brain about as to like what's been going on with that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the very basic idea was, for a few years now, I've really been skeptical of that revenue distribution that Curve has, which is it's not the revenue distribution itself. Of course, as a decentralized project, like you want to give money out to the stakeholders, but it just felt like there was so much. We were pissing money away at a stage where Curve is still a new sort of it's a startup. It's still a new venture. It needs a lot of money to fund its development and to allow it to scale. Um, and we've been doing that with a little bit of like Michael has been supporting the team for a while, but um, I think we're also reaching a point where we need to have a sustainable and also a decentralized way to fund development in the future of the protocol. And so the idea started by, well, where are we going to get the money from? And I don't think, as a DAO and as a commercial product, I don't think we really want to be trying to go down like chasing grants and passing off as a public good and relying on charity to fund the protocol. I don't think that's really going to work, especially when we're making a very decent amount of revenue every year. So the idea is it's very simple. It's just that we're going to take a little cut from the revenue that's distributed over VCRV. And we should try to build a treasury with it, some of which could go to funding development, some of which could go to other use cases. Like we've been talking for a while about bad debt insurance, so that's one possible use case. We have the community fund that is kind of furthest, but it's been used for, like the Viper compiler bug, like compensation for the victims. So now we're a little bit short on funding if we ever want to do something, like having an insurance fund again. So that's something that it could be used for. And usually the bad debt problems, they're really they're just a few like $1,000 here and there on small markets. So it's not the same amount of money that would be needed. So all of those are things that we could be looking to fund. The grant program itself, it's got a treasury, but it's not going to last forever, and at some point we want to replenish it. Um, so there's a number of things that we can do with that money. And again, it's not even really taking away from VCRV because the money still remains in their hands. It's going to go to a contract that will be controlled by the DAO. So, you know, it's up to them, really. It's up to the voters and the DAO to decide what to do with this money. Like, it just doesn't go directly into their pockets. But if at some point they decide to vote to give themselves a lot of dividends and plunder the fund to distribute it to VCRV, like, that's not really something that anybody can do anything about. But I think the community is responsible enough that they will fund development and fund other ventures that are positive for long-term value accrual, instead of just trying to line their pockets.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me, especially because it's kind of an underrated thing that Curve had millions of dollars in its war chest for a rainy day, and then got hit with a completely unforeseeably absurd Viper reentrancy bug, and just paid it out of pocket to make everyone whole, which is another amazing thing, and still actually happened to have a little money left over. But it's just it didn't have what could have been an expansive cushion that might have lasted years. It just put things kind of in a DAO, and to everyone's credit, was able to find some stopgap solutions, but completely agreed that there needs to be long-term sustainability in mind, because people made the arguments for a long time, to me at least. They're why do we need to fund devs at all? And it's kind of well, do you expect that DeFi is going to be the exact same today when you're asking me as it's going to be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years? At some point you need to start making plans for the future. And you need to be able to keep up with evolving narratives and evolving trends, and release new things like Try Crypto, Llama Land, and the Llama soft liquidations. So anyway, you posted this on March 3rd to the forum, so it's had about a month to gestate at this point. And I saw a lot of really positive reactions, but kind of what's the has there been any pickup since then? Did it you just get posted and it kind of sits there? Is there going to be an on-chain vote? What's the status of this in terms of governance?
In terms of governance, well, I guess the first thing that I was surprised by, when I was writing the proposal, I was very much on the defensive, because I would assume that there would be a lot of backlash. And very surprisingly, there was not a lot of it, at least coming from the community. And so some of the discussion in on the forums, but I got a lot of feedback as well over Telegram and Discord and Twitter. And I think overall, from within the Curve community, people pretty much realize that at this point, this is a necessity and it's just got to be done. And if we're going to discuss, if there's something to be debated, people were more concerned about what is the percentage going to be, and it's well, just set a number, and then we might argue about the number, but the underlying needs to fund developers, that's something that everybody agrees on. There was an interesting discussion about whether the money right now would be taken as CRV USD and kept that way. A number of people thought that they should be used to do buybacks and then buy CRV and then lock it. And then the DAO would use the yield from VCRV to fund itself. But it's just not really realistic with the amount of money, given the cut that we're offering to take and the amount of CRV that this would allow us to lock and the current yield on it. The profit would just be too small to actually fund the current expenses. But I thought it was an interesting. Sorry?
Buybacks don't even work all that well.
Well, I think the question was less about the buybacks. I guess people are worried about the price action, so I think a lot of the rationale behind that, people say let's keep it aligned and create incentives for the team to create value and revenue. And I think a lot of them are just more worried that instead, like this is not going to be used to pump their bags, and that buybacks might actually impact the price. Um, but I guess there's another, you could say that to show alignment, like it's better for um, the DAO to keep its treasury in its own token, or for the developers team to be, to sort of have that incentive to keep the price up, because their remuneration depends on it. But I'm not sure I'm too convinced about it. Like, we were talking about this just a few minutes ago. Crypto markets are not very efficient or very rational. Um, there's not much a developer can do over the course of a couple of years to really influence the price of a token. It's so narrative driven that ultimately, at least at the stage that the market is in, it seems to me like it's a very poor choice to tie the future of your project when it's still in that sort of nascent stage, to tie it to the price of the token. And then you create a lot of uncertainty, like a lot of anxiety for the developers team. It's like, well, like it doesn't matter how hard I work, if the market doesn't really value it, then maybe next year I won't get paid, and so I'm just going to go over to Moonboy DAO, uh, because they have great marketing, and they'll be able to pay me, and I'm sure I might still I'll still have a job in 2 years. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so the funny thing is, like, yeah, I could give millions of examples of curve price then and now and all the technology, but I'll just take the easier example. Like, the price of Ethereum now is about the same as it was before the merge, right? Like, obviously there's been a ton of amazing technical development. Even people who barely understand technology understand, like, the amount of like what an amazing feat it was for Ethereum to pull off the merge. And yet the price is now back down to before that happened. So it's like, were the developers like improperly incentivized? Like, no one's gonna be making that claim, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, well, I mean, you could make the claim that Ethereum also has. I mean, Protocol Guild does a very good job of trying and funding the developers, but I think there is also a problem to keep Ethereum developers funded, and it's sort of, like, maybe if we talk about Viper later, we can get back to that issue. But
Yeah,
there's a
definitely.
real problem in Web3 with developer compensation, and I would say it affects some of the most legit and decentralized projects first, because they're the ones that, like, they don't raise money from VCs. They try to handle things without KYC, without overburdening the devs with compliance requests, um, and that makes it a lot harder to get funding.
Yeah, very much so. So part of your proposal was to essentially use a forked version of the new fee splitter contract. This is
Uh,
something that you're interested in talking about some, right?
yeah. Well, it might be a bit different, but I guess it's going to be like a 2.0 version of that contract.
Hmm.
So I talked a bit with Alberto, and he's got some aspects of this contract that he wasn't fully satisfied with. And so yeah, I guess it's going to be using this as a basis, but making it a bit more generic so that it doesn't have to work with CRV USD only, and that it can be applied to, like, take any source, um, any level of, like, any percentage of the total revenue from Curve, and then direct that to um, a number of different avenues.
Right. But I think what's nice about it, so I was just pulling this from the bottom of your post, where you're mentioning here that would require a contract akin to it, but adapted to DEX pools. Um, and you give some of the pros and cons. And this is particularly just where your thought was, like, why don't we just take fees from 3Pool? Because 3Pool is its own thing. And then strategy 2 was like, okay, let's like just take a 10% slice across the board. Now, one of the interesting things about 3Pool is that, at least in the past month, the like 3Pool had the the strategic USD reserves kind of launched as a way of modernizing and kind of attracting some volume away from three pool, and it's actually like lately come to pass, right? Like the some of these strategic USD reserves are close to flippening three pool in terms of volume, despite being still a very small fraction of the TVL.
Yeah, so those pools have been incredibly successful. I think the idea came from Phil, who's working on the Curve Monitor team, and him and Fiddy were looking at. There was this guy. I don't know if you talked about it a few months ago. That was just deploying. He deployed like 10 different pools with a very tiny amount of TVL in each of them, but different fee structures. So that guy was like basically sort of, I guess you could say, like trying to make like almost a uni V3 position, like concentrated liquidity at different points with different like fee structures, and trying to make money off of it. And some of the like, I don't know if overall he made that much money, but some of those pools were very successful. And so that kind of gave right that idea that, well, maybe we don't need to get like crazy TVL on some of those pools. Like we could just concentrate the liquidity around certain points, and maybe we'll get enough we'll get enough volume that this will be self-sustainable. And so those strategic reserve pools kind of like started off of that observation and as an experiment, and it's probably been one of the most successful experiments that we've had in recent history. They're doing extremely well. They're also very, you could say, like self-sufficient. Like even if we don't, there is incentive, but we don't really need to direct incentives towards them to make them attractive. Like the base yield on its own is fairly rewarding for the LPs. Yeah, so that's been a fairly successful model. And then that also has given us, I guess, more confidence to experiment with three pool. Um, so we've changed. Well, the first big thing for three pool, and which was also one of the uh, one of the starting point for the proposal for Treasury, was that we removed the split towards LPs. And so everything in three pool now is basically going back to the DAO. LPs, I guess you can see it, right? Fee is the same as the DAO fee. So people in that pool don't make anything from the base APR. And so that allows us, because three pool is one of the highest revenue generating pool for curves. And so that allowed us to increase DAO revenue pretty much from overnight. So the original idea was like, well, now we've got that extra income. Like, why don't we use it maybe for an insurance pool or for something? Fund development. Let's just try and this is extra money that VCRV is going to get what without really doing anything, right? So why don't we take a cut from this and keep it to help the protocol? And so that was strategy number one. That explains also why it's the first one, because this is where the idea sort of originated. But it turns out from the feedback that we got, that everybody hates that idea. There's just take a cut on the whole thing, which is probably a better idea. It's going to be much more manageable rather than trying to target specific pool. We'll just take a cut on the revenue overall.
Well, I don't think everyone disliked it. I liked the idea. I thought that it was kind of a cool idea as a way of kind of, on some level, it's like we'd like to phase out three pool, but if like, if we're still like, if we can't phase it out, then like, why not like, like align it so it's like it's doing something for the team. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Like the important thing is like you put this out. It's like the first version. You took the heat, which always happens whenever you toss an idea out. Now, do you think it's at a stage to refine it and present it, or where are the next steps?
The next steps, no, there's still a bit of development work to do, which I've been just keeps getting delayed by some of the all of the other sort of everyday tasks that I get to do for Curve, like working on the back end. Like there's always going to be a bug, or there's always, or now that we're on a lot of chains, there's always something to do with like a new deployment, or we're tracking points for this protocol, and there's going to be they're going to need some data. So that has delayed a bit the development of the contracts, but hopefully right? This will this will get done sometime soon.
So I mean, we saw the graphic developer commits, so we know you're busy. You don't need to like try and justify that. Let's talk a bit about more about like the back end analytics stuff that you do, because this also been like another big initiative, which is just better understanding the user base of Curve. And there's been a lot of efforts done on this front. Of course, Curve is not going to be installing Google Analytics like most companies, because that has like terrible tracking like spyware stuff built into it. Curve is like super serious about like protecting people's privacy, so it's not installing any of those weird plugins. But that also means it's like more difficult to get a lot of data. But the data still exists on chain, right? So it's like there's still really good data. It's just sometimes tough to tease out. So what's been your like experience so far with this project to like better understand Curve's users?
Yeah. Yeah. So as you say, there's a really strong, like we are very conscious about user privacy and tracking. And like people that do UX and UI for Curve, I think would be very much interested in actually having maybe something that's less invasive than um, Google Analytics, maybe something that's opt-in, like not by default, but users, actually agree that I'm okay with being tracked and I know exactly where my data is going to get. Um, so this is not completely off the table, but we really do want it to be non-invasive and to be opt-in only. But for the time being, yeah, what we've got to work with is mostly on-chain data. We've also been doing user surveys to try to understand a number of things about how users use the protocol, also how they see the protocol and the brand of Curve, towards more sort of like abstract values, like how do you consider Curve security as opposed to other projects or legitimacy in the space, and so that helps us refine like sort of a brand strategy, and also how we present information in the front end. Um, yeah, but
Do
for
you have that
everything
link?
else,
Do you have
sorry.
that link handy? I'll put that link up on screen so we can anyone who hasn't taken the survey yet can.
I it would take me way too long to find it in the
Okay,
slide.
no
Plus,
worries.
I'm not
I'll
sure
see if
if
I can
they're
find it.
targeting like specific users.
Okay, never mind. Never mind. Don't take it.
But
I saw it
we
in Curve's Twitter account at some point, but Curve's been very
oh
chatty lately.
yeah, I'm not sure I can find it quick enough for it to be yeah, it
I'll
would take
I'll
me
I'll,
some time.
I'll see if I can do
Um,
it. You keep
okay.
spouting off brilliant things. I'll keep doing basic Google searches.
But like we this was an interesting survey because there were lots of things and previous surveys as well. Like there were lots of things that we didn't really expect in terms of how users see Curve. One of the most surprising findings to me was that people don't actually hate the UI. Um, like we love to beat ourselves up on like how shitty the UI has always like Curve is like defined by shitty UI. Um, and I think like people in the UI team on the front end have been doing a great work over the past couple of years to make that experience better. And it turns out that when we ask users, you always get like a couple of OGs that are like, bring back the classic UI. Like we want the old school look. But most people are actually quite satisfied with the way things currently work and are presented. We've had several like protocols that use the pool deployment wizard on the UI that said that it's the best experience they've had, like deploying capital or deploying pools, better than Uniswap, which we were really surprised about because we thought like all of the settings and everything might be terrifying or very obscure for protocols, but that was not the feedback that we got from the people that we questioned. So um, yeah, very interesting to hear from the users because sometimes the things that we see as pain points and that we want to focus on, they're not actually like they're not actually what the users care about.
And by the way, here's that link. So if you haven't taken that survey, it's going to be a little bit complicated. So I'll drop the link in the chat. I don't know if you're still accepting responses or if there's like a cutoff time. I know I did like an
Um,
informal survey last year, and like that was one of the things that drove me crazy was people continuing to submit after deadline.
I think, well, we've compiled the results already a couple of weeks ago, but I think if there's enough new people that are taking the survey, we might just run it and we'll look at the results and if anything's changed since the last ones we got. It's not a lot of work now. It's just yeah, we can just replug in the data and get the charts out.
Okay. So UI, that's a big learning. People actually kind of like the UI, and I agree. I think the UI is slamming. Were any other interesting findings so far?
Yeah. The trust in Curve, I thought, given the hack and the way that, like, again, this is a sign of why, like, price action is a terrible indicator. I would have assumed that if you look at the price of CRV and you map it to the hack chart and you realize that things have been going downhill since then. And I thought this would have given a big hit to Curve's credibility, but when you ask users like how do you feel in terms of safety like using Curve or what is your level of trust in the protocol, it's extremely high. um, and so I think like all of the work that we've done with Viper on one hand to secure the compiler, the refund of the hacks, right, which like we talked about this before, and I used to be pretty opposed to it. Like my general stance was that you're an LP, we were giving out CRV rewards, and that was compensation for the risk, right? And there's no rationale for you to ask for your money back. Like you took on that risk, you were paid for it, and now you got to deal with the consequences. But I think paying back the victims probably did a lot to restore confidence in Curve, and like people just know that the protocol has their back, and that we're going to try everything to make things right if there is ever a problem. And so I think this was yeah probably played an important role in restoring that faith in the protocol. I don't know if you remember, like DeFi Llama had those stats. It was a few months ago where they looked at the survival rate of protocols that got hacked, and of course there's a bit of bias there, but the protocols that paid back their users or issued some form of compensation, like they have a much higher survival rate than the ones who don't. Right? So it's like if you just decide to close shop, or if you just decide to keep things running as usual without disbursing anything to make the victims whole. Well, either you probably weren't a very like serious project to begin with, and so the project's just going to fold, or your users are just going to completely lose trust in their protocol, and they're going to migrate and move away, and that's going to be the end for your project.
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree with that. One of the things I was watching, because I mean, I still remember back that was like such a traumatic weekend. I got most of my gray hairs, I think, from that 1 week alone. But yeah, the like as far as like this question of like do will people ever trust Curve again? Like that was definitely one of like the big talking points. The Fudsters were like, oh, no one's ever going to trust Curve again. But to some level, because Curve is just like essentially just like giving out money and saying like, we will give out like tokens of Curve or whatever up until people are like willing, like people stop taking that risk. I'm like not phrasing this point very eloquently, but basically like the returns of Curve on all these various pools is a measure of the proxy measure for the risk, right? So if Curve was completely untrustworthy, like, and you went to see some like stablecoin pool with like Curve USD and something else, like you would expect to see like 50-60% Curve yields and no one biting. I was like paying attention to a lot of the key Curve pools after the fact, and like the returns they were at were like pretty close to the returns before. So it was kind of like in the not too like distant amount of time, like people were like seeing the like emissions to Curve pools. They're like, okay, I'm willing to take that risk. They're satisfied that Curve was like doing a lot to protect safety and doing all the right things, moving in the right direction. So at least from what I've seen, like it's like the question of people trusting Curve, like thankfully seems like it's like we're more concerned about it than the actual market proved to be.
Yeah, but I think strategically and for the long-term growth, it's also important to have that. I mean, to have secured that confidence from the users, because as you said, there's a direct relationship between, and this is much more rational than the actual price action of the token. Like if you look at the yields on those different platforms, like the risk premium is a lot more rational and reactive, and so
Risk
for us
premium.
to
That's the word I was
right,
looking
and so for us to continue funding the growth of Curve, The fact that the users trust us, that allows us to spend a lot less money on incentivizing, like capital to come and use Curve, and that's capital that's freed up that can be used for development and other things.
Yeah. That being said, though, like since the hack, the TVL has not been good for Curve. Like the TVLs have essentially been static. Although I argue that the efficiency seems like it's gotten better since then, as a result
Yes,
of more stable
there's
swap V2 pools, crypto swap V2 pool. Yeah.
yeah. So we do try and monitor utilization of the pools, and that has been a much better metric, I think, than overall TVL. Another thing that I guess you should take into account is just the general price action for the type of tokens that are traded on Curve. So obviously, stable coins are a big one, but we've also got crypto assets, and we don't really do the crypto assets that have been doing well this cycle, right? So there's no meme coins. We don't really do like the big AI, like fancy projects. Um, and I think part of it is that we're not really trying actively to get that business. When it comes to meme coin, I think it's also that the developer skills are pretty low in that space. And so the barrier to entry is probably higher. Like, why would you bother and learn about how to make a curve pool when you can just go with Uni V2 and be done with it? Like, you can copy
Yeah.
paste the development script from the other project anyway.
Curve's been
Yeah, so like
arguably
market
hostile.
conditions. Sorry.
Curve has arguably been hostile as a team towards meme coins, relative to like the stablecoin projects. I'd say. Like, of course, it's not like hostile in terms of like anyone could come and launch a pool and like it's decentralized and all that. But I feel like Curve's like the team's focus has much been on like more like serious stablecoin projects. It seems like.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I guess individually, all of us, like none of us is really interested in what's going on in that space. So we're not going to actively pursue that business. Um, and yeah, as you said, like we're more interested with things that are going to be relevant 5 years down the line. So making sure the protocol has a reputation that's high enough so that when, like real world asset issuers come on chain and they're looking for a home for their product, they're going to come to Curve. When foreign, like on chain, foreign exchange starts becoming a thing, like we want Curve to be at the center of this. When lending becomes bigger, like we also want to be a part of that expansion. So those are the things that we've got our eyes on. Um, and Duckcoin number like 20,000, like we don't. It's probably still going to be in the space in 20 years, but I don't think we're very well positioned to get value from it.
You gotta pick your battles. So
Yeah, yeah,
you you
exactly.
you mentioned lending markets, and I think this is so funny because remember how I was saying earlier, like Curve had this like for the first time it's caught the narrative, and it just so happens to have caught the narrative when everything's going down, so it didn't bother to help anything. I feel like the same thing almost is happening with resupply, where resupply comes along with this like once in a like lifetime, like I don't want to say once in a lifetime because the convex team like frequently and your team frequently come out with like bangers like this. But it's just like a brilliant idea that like came out of left field as far as I'm concerned. No one thought about it. And it could have like really, really dropped rates. Except it came at a time when like no one was interested in longing Bitcoin because everything's tanking. So yeah, we've managed to drop our market rates here from like point 0.08%, 0.07%. So everyone
It's
load up.
yeah, it's literally free money. But maybe one thing is probably there hasn't been enough communication on this yet. So I guess we should try and do better. We could compare, like have a tool to compare those rates with other competitors, and sort of try and communicate a bit more on that. Like, I don't know if people outside of the ecosystem really realize
Well, how about this?
how much of an impact like resupply has had on the rates and how there's like money laying on the floor there just waiting to be picked up.
Well, I mean, there is like a thing in this space where there is information overload. So a lot of people like no matter how much you shout, there's a million other people shouting, and no one like it's tough to like pick out one voice of the crowd. But we got 300 people watching right now, so why don't we make the case? And by the way, for those 300 people watching, please retweet and share and like this to get this up to like 3,000, and then we're like going to hear from Benny. What is this free money hack you referenced? Like you said that there's free money lying on the table, but if I'm like a smooth brain, how do I get that free money and get it into my pocket? Why don't you walk me through the steps like I'm like on the left side of the bell curve?
Yeah, I mean, you borrow money at a very low rate. You can get stable coins in exchange, and then you can like you can just, for example, stake it on resupply and get 20% yield, and you can take out a loan against your CRV USD, get some re-USD, stake that in one of the pools or in the insurance pool for resupply, and you get another 23% yield on that. So you can get close to like 40% without even any leverage, right? But resupply also has leverage. Um, so yeah, instead of just looking at the rate here, you might also look at the opportunities that borrowing on Curve gets you just through resupply, for example.
So like why shouldn't people be more skeptical of like super high yields? Like is it because it's too good to be true?
Well, I think for resupply, the tokenomics are very much like convex in that they're opting for sort of like trying to get a head start, and so they're very aggressive in the early days. So like now is the best time. Like it may look like the market is down, but this is when the opportunities arise, right? There's not a lot of people. I mean, resupply has grown tremendously, but compared to the yields that are still available, like there's still a lot of room for growth, and so they're not going to last forever. Because more people are going to become aware of it, and so they're going to start using resupply, and they're going to drive the yields down. And the emissions at some point will also decrease. But right now, at least, right, it's probably like the best yields you can get on stables on chain, especially when you consider the risk reward.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's necessarily the best yields on stables, but for adjusted for risk reward, yes, and also like adjusted for like the complicatedness of it. We've had on some stablecoin farmers who like talk about like these insanely like to me complicated strategies where you have to like super leverage these things and then like redeposit to Pendle and then like short all these stuff, and it's like I take notes and I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. Okay, yeah, but it sounds like a lot of work and like I'm lazy. Um, so like full disclosure, like I'm using resupply. It's amazing. I am making a lot of money. I hope people don't use resupply because like the more people that use it, the more that they get diluted. But I'm still here like saying like it's really good. So that screenshot I was just showing like the basic like rewards are like 22% on just like the you take your like whatever like you take your like you have to spend like 3% to borrow the REUSD. You're getting the 20% right there, and then as mentioned, like the you go back to Curve with the REUSD that you get, and those pools are doing very very good as well. Let me just pull up the S Curve USD REUSD pool that I'm in. Well, we're shoot, it's going slow right now. I'll get that up, but it's good. It's getting good trading fees, and it's getting like insane emissions. So, and it has a yield bearing stable coin as one of the tokens. So like it's a no brainer. Here we go. 16 million REUSD, 5 million S Curve USD. So a lot of LPs have figured this out. Base VAP wise, 2.5%, which is pretty close to interest rates. The rewards TAPR is 27 up to 67%. I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it's a great opportunity. If you're doing it in the pool, you get CRV rewards, which I think most of the viewers will be bullish on. Um, if you're in the insurance pool on resupply, then you get your rewards. I mean, as well as on your loan for borrowing rewards, you get the RSIP token, RESIP. I'm not sure how you're supposed to say it. Which is an interesting token at this point. Like the price action, I don't know if you've been following it. It's been very
Oh
volatile.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
been super interesting. Let me pull that up because there's not that much of it. Like the tokenomics of it, like I don't know if like there are insider deals or something where people got a lot, but I was kind of keeping an eye on the staked RSUP because I got like some vestings RSUP as a result of being in Prisma, which means like and from now for the next 5 years, it's just going to trickle in my wallet, and I'll occasionally I'll claim it, I'll stake it, and all that because I'm don't learn my lesson. I keep doing, I keep max locking these VE tokens. Um, there's not that much RSUP is the moral of the story. Like it kind of like trickled on the market. It seemed like, and most people just got it as this kind of fair launch vesting. So it's like super small supply still, right?
Yeah, it's still below 1 million. So it's what the total supply now is at 60 million on here, and circulating would be below 1 million.
Which is kind of crazy. So I'm just going to pull up the curve pool here
And
because
then the
that's the
big
one that
part of this is actually also, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's below 1 million. Um, and just a fraction of this is going to be in the liquidity pool. Right, right. So you've got that up here.
yeah, so it's about 200,000 of that million is sitting in this curve pool. Um, so it's pretty wild because with a total of $1 million in there, it actually like doesn't take much to swing the price massively.
Yeah, so the price action right now is probably not going to be very meaningful. That's why you get those huge like pumps and dumps. It's just that the liquidity is very small,
Exactly.
and it's a very rare asset, and it's likely to remain that way for quite a few years. Like as you mentioned, a lot of the our sub that was distributed, like there's no real insider deal. I mean, Convex and Urine get a big portion of the original supply, but it's permanently locked in a contract. So that's like that's never coming out. It's not really circulating. And then the rest goes to the Prisma hack victims, and so those are locked for 5 years. Like pretty much everything that's been distributed at launch comes with a vesting period. So you really got a couple years, right, before the people that got any sort of distribution at launch, which isn't even that many people, will be able to dump their rewards on the market. So yeah, I think there's a good setup for pumponomics, at least at the beginning of the project.
So here's the RSUP staking screen, and like when I was first watching this was like not as much. 650K of the RSUP is staked. Is that included in the circulating supply?
That would be
Probably not.
included in it. Yeah, yeah. So like
Okay,
basically,
so
you
it is.
add the liquidity pool and the staked amount, and like that would give you like pretty much the entirety of the supply, and then the rest is just probably like just emissions that people haven't claimed yet.
Which is just wild because like going back to the liquidity pool, I don't know if you could see on the screen. If I took 2 Ethereum nodes, validator nodes offline, 32 ETH apiece, and plowed it into RSUP, that alone would cause a 20% price swing, assuming that the
Go for it. Go for it right now.
well, that's why you see these like crazy swings where like every now and then like you look at CoinGecko and you'll be like, okay, it just shot from $2 to $3 in a hot minute.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You get like 50% in just one trade. It's wild. Yeah.
So it's been fun to watch, and then it's in particular been fun to watch like as just dollars keep flowing into things. So
Yeah, I mean, like the staking yield is very decent as well, and that's a testament to like the sustainability of the project. It's I don't know like the TVL, if you go back to that page, I think it's still below 100 million, but it's a fairly good number. What are we at? Like 50?
which page do you want me to pull back up? Sorry.
Resupply, the total TVL.
Yeah, let me get that up. The total TVL right here, $1 million USD.
Oh, sorry, I meant in the protocol itself.
Oh yes, one second. Switch to this.
But I guess like the point is just this is still very early stage. It launched about 2 weeks ago, and the VIP the VAPR that you're getting on staking is all from revenue, right?
It's got 50 million. It's like
Yeah, yeah, but it's making a lot of money on this. Like the fee distribution is pretty good already. I mean, it's not gonna last as more of the supply unlocks. Like more people, I guess, are gonna stake. But it's doing a great job at generating revenue and distributing that to token holders.
And at some point, hypothetically, markets broadly might stop going down and might start going up, and people might start like getting interested in longing Bitcoin, Ethereum, things like that on Llama Land, on Curve USD, which in theory would cause borrow rates to also spike. And what does the RSUP universe look like once, like, let's say, like Curve USD borrow rates are like up around like 10% or something?
Right. Yeah. um, I think it's going to be like it's tied sort of in a very symbiotic relationship with the lending products on Curve, and I guess it's going to be the flywheel, right? It works both ways. So like growth right now is kind of limited as long as people are not longing, but the moment that CRV USD takes off, then resupply is just going to take off with it, and then uh, they're going to feed on the growth of one another, right? And so that's going to give us two very successful protocols.
I mean, yeah, it's good. It's exciting stuff. If markets ever go up, right? We don't have any evidence that markets are going to ever go up again.
Yeah, well, we're I guess we wouldn't be in this space if we weren't optimistic about the future of what we're building.
We
I
wouldn't
don't
be
know.
in the space if
Are you getting jaded after so many years?
no. I mean, I'm super excited about this space still. Like, there's nowhere else I could go. But I'm also like highly unemployable anywhere else, and I think a lot of people in the crypto space fit that as well.
Yeah. I guess there's definitely some stigma. Like I'm not sure with my resume over the past 5 years, if I were to go to like a regular job interview and explain the HR people what I've been doing with my life. Um, not sure how that would work out. Yeah.
But anyway, whatever. Let's talk about Viper. Because I've already been yakking your ear off for like an hour. Do you don't have like a hard stop? Do you still have time to talk about Viper, or do you have to jump
Yeah,
soon?
sure. I love talking about Viper. Yeah.
All right, good. That's what I like to hear. All right. So, what's the path to SNEC supremacy?
Right. So this is something that I think is becoming clearer every day is that uh, people are just tired of Solidity. Right. And I don't mean that as a diss for the team that's working behind it, that's doing it's doing great work, but I think it's suffering. And in a way, like a lot of original crypto project kind of have this where you started in this period of incredible growth and experimentation and you had to make technical decisions under pressure. And then you kind of had to double down on it because so much of the ecosystem was relying on those decisions and you couldn't make changes anymore. And so that means that the language has accumulated a lot of technical debt. And it's trying to deal with it in ways that are either not really sustainable or piss off people. Like, I don't know if you follow the EOF debate at all.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people are starting to think that like the Ethereum as a whole is now sort of like trying like leaving they're left with the holding the bags for Solidity's technical debt, right? Or they have to take on extra risk because of it. Um, and I don't know if you've seen this tweet, like just this morning, uh, Giorgio's from Paradigm like tweeted about how bearish he is on the future of Solidity, and asking whether, like, I guess Paradigm itself, that like they've been instrumental, right, in providing excellent dev tooling for Solidity. And it's looking like they've got second thoughts now. Like, have we been backing the wrong horse? So should we just launch a new language or should we support Viper? And I don't know which way they're going to go, but I think it's just a very good sign that people are starting to look for alternative, and more than look, they're starting to really feel the need for it. And so I think there's a great right sort of opportunity for Viper to move in and gain adoption, because we already have like with the improvements to the language that have been done over the past couple of years. Like we're in a very mature stage. I think you've worked with Moccasin, have you?
I haven't yet. I've been meaning to. That's next on my list. Actually, the thing about it is like Titania Boa solves all my needs at the moment, so I
Okay.
kind of don't need Moccasin in the way. Like when I first started like developing in crypto, like Brownie was useful because it like took all the things that were confusing and kind of like made it super simple. But like at this point, like I'm like technical enough that like just the kind of Swiss Army knife approach of Boa is sufficient for me.
Okay. Yeah. But like if you try it out, you'll really get that sort of experience that you had with Brony where things just click. like you don't have to deal with any of the complexity. You don't have to deal with all of the boilerplate of setting up, like your if especially if you're interacting with on-chain contracts. I still feel like Brownie Titanoboa is a lot of work to
It
set
is,
up
but
like
like
interaction with existing contracts. Like the whole mocking process is a bit, it's work intensive, is how I would put
it
it.
is. It is. I have like a few helper functions that I've developed for like pulling contracts that make it like a little bit simpler, but like yeah, there's like a couple tiny tweaks. I will say that like Brownie like just nailed the user experience, and if like just like little things that like you wouldn't expect, like the shell worked so well, the like interactive tests I felt like dropped you in the command line at just the right place. So maybe I should give Moccasin a try.
Yeah, definitely, because Patrick, the developer from Cyfriend that's been working on it, like, he's very open about it. Like, I'm trying to write this, like, I'm trying to recreate that Brownie experience, and so
Yeah.
you'll get that same like excellent, really easy UX with Moccasin that you had with Brownie, except that it works with the latest versions of Viper, and a lot of the bugs of Brownies have been ironed out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like we're doing much better on developers tooling. We're also trying to communicate more, and I think this is probably our like main hurdle at this point, is that we need to get more adoption. So we need to sort of spread the gospel. Like we need apostles to go out to conferences, organize hackathon, um, and we've been doing a bit more of that, and we're already starting to see some sort of a like a network effect where it used to be, like we knew everybody that was doing Viper events, right? Like it's like there's a conference, and then we know like this guy that's within our small like circle of Viper dev will be there and will give a talk. But now we're seeing stuff like, like we'll learn on Twitter that there was a Viper hackathon or a Viper workshop like somewhere in India or South America or Europe, and we don't know those guys, right? But they just gave the language a try. They loved it, and they were like, "I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna get other people involved." And so the more of that, the more of those things that we see, I think the more adoption we're going to see in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I will confess to being one of the Viper enthusiasts. I just did a Viper coding tutorial yesterday in the Barachain Discord. I have the video. I just got it back from it
Excellent,
just a few
excellent.
minutes
Yeah, no,
ago.
you should send it over, because we're also like, the Viper Twitter account will be very happy to retweet that. Like if anybody among the viewers right now, like if you're interested in organizing a Viper event, a Viper hackathon, anything related to Viper, like we're more than happy to support it with the socials.
Oh yeah, I no appreciate it. Like I definitely posted up someplace. Ended up like it was supposed to be like an hour, and it ended up going for 2.5 hours. But people like just kept listening and sticking around, so I guess like they liked it. So it's a doozy, but it was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, yeah. One thing again, like in terms of user feedback, one thing that's very heartening with Viper is just how much like people that use the language love it. And you don't really get that with Solidity. Like you'll have like wizards, right? That like they don't mind doing assembly, and like they're fluent in Yule, and they're like, Solidity's fine. I like the language. Um, but when you talk to beginners, like it's a completely different story. Like people are confused. They're worried that they're going to shoot themselves in the foot because they're not aware of all like the hidden traps and foot guns that you have in Solidity. Um, and just going to Viper, where none of those things are a problem, gives you as a beginner developer a lot more confidence, and of course, a lot more love for the language, because you don't feel like it's going to betray you behind your back, right? Like,
Right, right. Another cool thing about Viper is just like the access. If you do hop in like the Viper Telegram or the Viper Discord to top tier devs, like I think like that is unmatched. That like you can kind of go on and be like, "Hey, I'm trying to do this and I'm confused. It's not working," and you'll have like like insanely genius programmers like within minutes be like, "What are you trying to do? Like, let's see if we could solve this. Let's see if we can find like the best way to do it." In some cases, they'll be like, "Oh, you actually stumped us. We can't do it. Here's a quick fix," and they'll like just release within like a few hours like a new like build a Viper that actually solves the problem that you have.
yeah, I think that's actually that was exactly my experience, and what got me interested in Viper in the first place is I was working on some contract, like something very tiny, and I needed just a small feature, and I asked about it on Discord, and he's like, "Oh," right, and like like half an hour later, like there was a PR with the feature request in it, like taken care of. So I don't want to oversell it because I know that like this is definitely an advantage that we have over Solidity, but I know that this advantage only comes from like the smaller community that we have at the moment.
That's
But
true. That's true.
right, but it's definitely a strong selling point. Like if you're a new developer with Solidity, it's really hard to find support. Right? Like there's a few Discord channels out there, but also you never know who's really going to try to help you and who's actually just a scammer. The people that help you might also just be beginner. So just as you said, like really having crack devs answer your question, that's really something that you're not going to find with Solidity.
Or let me just try another angle out here. If you're a star chaser out there, and you pop into some of the Viper groups, you might bump into someone with the initials VB.
Absolutely. So this has been right a new development. I think he joined the Viper sort of insider Telegram and is now also in our like
Public one
public
too.
channel. Yeah. So I mean, he's been loving Viper for a long time. He's given us like shout outs in the past, but this year, Vitaly actually built like a new contract in Viper. And then he'll pop up in the chat every now and then and just yeah, like give feedback on his use of the language, participate in discussions around like EIPs and like like language design.
And some
So
memes.
then,
So,
sorry.
some memes. He weighed in some memes, I believe.
Yes, yeah, those as well. Yeah, I guess we could call it like branding. um, but yeah, it's been great to have our
His
grandfather or father back, right?
the founding father, yeah, absolutely. He
Yeah.
founded Viper way back when, and he's back. Came back to it.
And I think this also gives us a lot more legitimacy when we're trying to sell the project to like other like L2s, for example. This gives us another argument for why you as an L2 might want to fund us. Is we're a project by the original Ethereum founder who's still actively involved in the project, and clearly he sees values in this for the future of the chain. So if you're an L2 and you pretend to be aligned, like why not fund Viper?
Yeah, and every L2 listening, by the way, should fund Viper because like there's amazing devs building amazing applications in Viper. Like one of the things I've noticed is like a lot of the like serious DeFi protocols, Curve, Lido, some Aerodrome, Velodrome contracts, the original Uniswap contracts. Like a lot of DeFi contracts are like pretty serious. Not building like just like little gimmicky apps, building real stuff people use, and they've been using Viper. So if you want to attract like some serious users, some serious like heavy dev firepower to your chain, like there's active Viper like people like myself that'd be happy to come by and like teach your devs how to get some simple like DeFi native smart contracts going in Viper.
Yeah, so this is something that I wanted to try and calculate is like the percentage of original contracts that are written in Solidity, Rust, and Viper. Right? And I think like because there's so much forking, like, especially if you look at Solana, like a lot of the contracts are just going to be, like factories from pum.fun or whatever. And so there's going to be a lot of redundancy. But when you look at um, some of the repositories that try to compile like an archive of Viper contracts, like you realize the people that are using the language, like they're doing their own thing. They're not just copy and pasting an existing contract and just putting like their name on it. So there's a lot of original work that goes with it. And I think for an L2, right, that's definitely an argument that it's going to bring developers to your chain. But I think there's also sort of like second and third order effects that are they're harder for us to sell to L2s. But I don't know if you've seen that study on open source development where like for $1 that's invested in open source development, there's $2,000 of value that's created. So
I
it's an
think I've seen that. Let
insane.
me try and pull that
Sorry.
up. Let me try and pull that up. I think I saw that.
Yeah, it was on the Twitter account of the Hugging Face guy. It's got a French name.
Face guy. Okay.
Clement Delong.
No worries. No worries. We'll post it in the
Wait.
show.
I think I've got it here. Can I?
Oh, yeah,
Can I
there's a private
type
chat.
in the
Drop
chat?
it.
I don't think I'm able to. Oh, private
Look
chat.
at the
Oh,
bottom
okay.
left. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I've been
Yeah.
whispering
Sorry.
sweet nothings in your ear. and you're not replying.
um, yeah, right. And so I have it here, right? And it says if you're a company, you need to spend 3.5 times more on software than you currently do if open source wasn't around. And so I think for the development of Viper, like you're funding the language, um, you're potentially bringing Viper developers to your chain, but you're also unlocking other things. Like if you think about Viper, it's also Curve and the innovations that come with it. Right. So soft liquidation is about to become a standard in lending. Like Avo is implementing it. I've seen like a number of other protocols trying to come up with their own version of it. But that idea originally, right, that was only made possible by Curve, and then ahead of that by Viper. The same for like Urn Volt and what they've done with their Volt Factory. Right now, like I've been asked to do for like a new project, like a sort of auto compounder type of thing, and I don't really need to write the contracts myself anymore because the work that Urn has done and open sourced is just already audited and secure enough that anybody on any chain can deploy it.
Yeah, I forgot
So
to mention
funding
Urn.
Viper is sorry.
When I was shouting out projects in DeFi using Viper, I forgot to mention Urn is like a huge Viper user. Some
Yeah, right, and they're doing some of the most like yield aggregation is really one of the most common like use cases in product in DeFi right now, but they're the ones doing it right. Like if you want to fork something, like if you want to, even look at something to learn how to do it, like their contracts is the way to go. Because we've been doing that for Llama Air Force, right? But I looked at their factory contract, and there's so many edge cases that are taken care of that only a protocol like them that really has their hands in like every single aspect of DeFi for their strategy, right, would really be able to have that sort of systemic view of what all of the things that you could need if you were to do a Volt. Right? And so that's now available for anyone to use, right? And so if a new chain launches, probability is they're going to have a bunch because those are usually the first mover, right? Like you get the dexes, and then on top of that, you get the yield aggregators. Um, and so you're probably going to get a lot of those that will be either looking at your own contracts or forking their contracts and deploying on your chain. And that's going to bring value to it. And that value is only unlocked if the original language that made it possible is financed in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. Like the Yearn thing's a really good example because they've had their contracts are battle tested. Many have been audited, so you can actually just like copy paste, like production level code that solves a lot of these problems. So it's great stuff. Curve ended up doing that for some of its recent stuff. Let's get back to this question of public goods funding, and we talked about how like Vitalik has been like poking around with Viper lately, but there was like a fair amount of conflict last year, I think it was, when the Ethereum Foundation was essentially like creating a fund to fund like pretty much every language but Viper after Viper had been like trying for like the longest time to get public goods funding. And that like feud kind of like subsided a bit, right?
Yeah, well, I think one misconception about it is people had the impression that Viper had been asking for funding for a long time, and that just wasn't the case. So I think it was about 2 years ago, maybe now, when I just sent Charles a DM, and it was like, "Did anybody ever like? Is there like bad blood between you guys and the EF?" And I got the sense that like there were some old like stories there, but basically no one had been in contact with them, and no one had asked for funding in recent years. Um, And part of it was because up until that point, like Curve had been the main sponsor of Viper, but that also created a dependency relationship that wasn't very healthy because we had like one big sponsor. And then when that money dries out or isn't enough to finance the growth of the language, like you're left with, well, basically the situation we were in where we start to have to look around for funding. So it wasn't like, I guess like there's also an important lesson for public good funding in there, which is that a lot of people for a long time were complaining that the Ethereum Foundation wasn't funding Viper, but it turned out that nobody had actually taken the time to like fill out the form and ask for money. So I guess it's easier to write like a tweet in 140 characters than it is to fill like a form with 20 fields. Um, but yeah, like it's also like a lot of I see always like there's a lot of drama and indignation on Twitter by people like fund this and fund that. Uh, but that doesn't always translate into action. And so I think if you're seeing like your favorite project struggling with funding, like just try and get involved. Like there's, it's hard to get the money, but it's definitely not going to happen if nobody does it. And the developers just don't have the headspace to do it. Like one thing that I've noticed, trying to chase money for Viper is just how time consuming it is in terms of like building relationships, like chasing the grant programs, like trying to see like who might be inclined to fund Viper and for what reasons. So it's a lot of time, and it's not something that the devs should be spending their energy on.
Right.
So yeah, so I mean, then we did apply for funding, and it got rejected. So that part wasn't great. But this is when the Twitter drama comes in handy, right? Because the backlash it lasted for a couple of days, and then we got an email, and they were like, "Oh, it's a misunderstanding. Like we didn't," and maybe it was, um, but in any case, like that had the positive effect that we thought we weren't going to get any funding, but they emailed us back and they say, "Well, look, this is not what we're trying to do. We really do want to fund Viper," and so we kept the conversation going, and we got support. This like a couple of months ago, it was made official. And so we got a very generous amount. Some of it is matching. So some of it is directly like we get to use that money to pay the devs and their salaries, and some of it's going to be a matching scheme. So any money that we get from other protocols, the Ethereum Foundation is going to match it to a similar amount. Um, so if you're an L2, if you're a protocol, you want to fund Viper, like do it now, because we got about, I think it's like 300,000. I forget the exact number, but it's several hundred thousands of dollars in matching, right? So if you give us, even if it's only like $10,000, $15,000, like it's instantly going to be doubled because the Ethereum Foundation is going to match it.
So where do people go if they want to donate to Viper and take advantage of this? Because I actually I have to admit, someone was asking me that, and I was like, "Oh, it's on their website." And then I looked at it and I was like, "Okay, it's not on their website." So it's not
So we
easy to
need,
accidentally give money to Viper.
yeah, we need to work on that donation page on the website a little bit. There's a link on the GitHub repo that will take us to our multisig. It should be, I don't know if you've got the page open. It should be on the right. So if you go to Viper Lang, right, and then Viper, the first one at the top, right there, and go down a little bit. Oh, sorry, isn't there a sponsorships page? Up, up, up. It should be on the thing like above languages. Right, sponsor this project. So it's not really visible. I guess that's a good. Like we spent 2 minutes looking for it. Under releases and overused by on the toolbar on the right. No, on the right, on the right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So go down a little bit. You've got releases, and then you've got sponsor this project. And so, right, so we've got Etherscan if you want to give out like just money. Give is matching. I think the campaign is still ongoing, so that's the best way to fund us at the moment. Like if you send it through Give, right, we're gonna get a little bit of matching from that project.
Right. So that's just giveeth.io/project/Viper. I'm dropping this in the chat. We'll drop it in the show notes too, because I think $516. Come on, people! Like I've spent more on gas in the bull market.
Yeah, so we failed to get on the latest Gitcoin round because the application
No one,
is just so
no one filled out
convoluted.
the form.
We did fill out the form, but their website is just I think it's just fucked beyond repair. We're not the only project. Like we just couldn't submit our application, and we tried for like 2 weeks, and we got the support involved, and eventually it just didn't work. But there's a bunch of other grant programs that are out there, and we're very much looking for also. I think like grant programs have also become more formalized across Web3, and I think they're great for like incentives program or like fostering new protocols that are, kind of like up and coming, and they need a little bit of money to pay their devs, and then they can launch and actually make revenue. But they're not always greatly, like, they're not well tailored to larger, more mature projects like Viper. So if you know people that are in grant programs at like major L2s or L1s or DeFi protocols, like anybody that might be interested in building a partnerships with Viper, like we're really interested in developing that and getting funding that's a little bit outside of the traditional grant programs. Like we'll apply to those, but the amounts and the scopes, they're not necessarily, like, they don't really fit the needs of the project. But there's a lot of things that we can do with L2s in terms of like organizing events, hackathons, like educational material, working. If you've got a developers community, like we're more than happy to organize events with them and like get them started with Viper. Sometimes, especially if your like L2 is not entirely EVM compatible yet, maybe we can do something to add better support or make it easier for developers that use Titanoboa or now Moccasin, right, to be able to interact with that chain, so we can sort of tailor a little bit to your needs and to make sure that your chain is more visible and easier to deploy on with our dev tools. So yeah, like I think there's many avenues for cooperation with those projects, and we're happy to explore them.
Excellent, excellent. Let's talk about Veriferium. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and Viper formal verification.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's one of the most exciting developments that we've had this year. Um, so this started with Romana, who is, well, I kind of came out of nowhere, at least in the Viper community, right? Like we hadn't really heard of him before, but he'd been in Web3 for a while. He was a contributor to Rocket Pool, and then he shows up one day and is like, "Well, like I did my PhD thesis on formal verification, and turns out like there's only a few, maybe I like a few fully formally verified compilers in the world. There's like 3 or 4 of them maybe." And so what formally verified means is basically you can mathematically prove, like, your compiler takes a high level language like Viper, right, and is going to turn it into machine code, into bytecode. So it's like a translation process, yeah. And what
Right.
verification allows you to do when you're using it on a compiler like Viper is to prove mathematically that that translation process is sound. So typically, example of a compiler bug, what happened with the reentrancy hack, right? Like you were using the high level language and you were writing non-reentrant. And so you were expecting that the compiler would interpret that higher level language and translate it to something that actually does that in machine code. But we didn't really have a way to verify, except for Otis, that this was actually happening. And so what formal verification does is that it allows you to confidently, like mathematically say that this feature is going to behave the way that we expect it at the bytecode level. And so what this unlocks is basically a whole new level of safety that's currently unmatched, right, in Web3. Like you can have total confidence that the code that you write in your higher level language, once it's translated to bytecode, it's going to do exactly the same thing. And that's also a very different approach from Solidity, that's kind of trying to push for like inline assembly, which is very hard to read and very hard to audit. And then you also have to trust that the dev is competent enough to actually handle that bytecode. Whereas here, right, you don't have to worry about inline assembly because you know that everything you write in the higher level language, which is simple, is going to behave exactly that way at the bytecode level. And so if you look at, like, there is not a lot of compiler that are, like C is one of them, but basically any industry that is like where the software is going to be mission critical. So things like aerospace, some aspects of finance, right? You're going to want to have a fully verified compiler because this will mean that any code that your developers write, you're not going to have to look for bugs like that are introduced by the compiler and that are kind of outside of your it's out of your hands, right? Because you're not building that compiler. So it's exactly what happened for Curve, right? Like it wasn't the full, like Curve developers did everything right, like they used the language the proper way, but then the bug was on the compiler side. And so having this like really unlocks an entirely new level of security for Web3. Um, and like again, I think this really positions Viper for the future. Like when you like now you're starting to see a lot more like TradFi institutions come on chain, and I think their first and foremost their concern is going to be security, right? And what language are you going to adopt? Like the one that actually gives you mathematical proof that any code that like you write code and you get an audit for it, and then that's all you got to do. You don't have to worry about the compiler introducing a bug. And that's going to be the only compiler language in Web3 with that value proposal is going to be Viper.
Yeah, makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, I've always had the impression that like Viper just makes more sense for DeFi where things are mission critical. Whereas if it's like a fun NFT project or something, like, maybe it doesn't matter as much. But if you're talking about like we would like to build stuff to scale to hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars of TVL, like, you care about like making sure that every single penny is accounted for. So it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, right. And so Veriferium starts with Viper, but they're also going to allow like it's going to be it's just starting out obviously, and we're also looking for funding to help Romana build this project. But it's really going to like the end game is to be sort of like a full toolkit for formal verification. So this will also apply to contracts as well, eventually. And so you can, like you're writing your DeFi protocol, and then you can easily use with Veriferium like formal verification to try and prove that there is no unexpected state and unexpected bugs in your contract. So it's just going to be it's going to make formal verification a lot easier. You could say at all levels of the stack.
Very nice, very nice. So makes sense to me. Especially with Viper like continuing to like release new versions because like Viper's still at it, like, and I know that like Viper 4.0 with modularization took a long time to get right. But there's already some talk of like some changes to like how DIN arrays are going to be handled in Viper 4.2, I understand.
Yeah, I think some of the main things that people are asking for, obviously, dynamic arrays are a big one. Um, Packing, value packing as well. Like because this is still sort of a weaker point as opposed to solidity. Like we can claim, like we're doing a lot better on gas optimization, but this is also sort of a low hanging fruit for it. And this has been a constantly requested feature. So those are some of the things that are being built. Um, yeah. But I would say overall, well, what I like about the way that Viper development is going as well is that there's also a lot of care to really keep the language simple. Like we want to add new features, but at the same time, we want to make sure that the semantics of the language remain as readable and as simple as possible. And we don't want to just rush into things and add like 1,000 new features um, that then we're going to have to maintain, or that are going to get deprecated over time, or that they're going to add like code lines to the code base, and it's going to be harder to ensure their security. So that effort to keep the language lean, I think, is very commendable, and of course, is also going to contribute to the security of the language. Like one of the main, like we were talking about formal verification, like one of the main pain points for formal verification adoption is that you formally verify your compiler, but it's usually just one version. Like, and it's sort of a fixed thing. And like, as soon as there's a new feature in it, well, you have to rewrite. Like, you have to also make a new version of the verified compiler. And so it can be very hard because usually this team on the verified compiler is going to be a lot smaller than the one on the original compiler. It can be very hard to follow the developments and the new features. And so what you get usually with those formally verified compilers is that they're always going to be a few versions behind the latest version. One strength that Viper has is that because the semantics are so simple, right? Like you only got a few instructions, and everything in the language is built with that philosophy of simplicity, right? That also means that keeping up with the latest version for the formally verified version of the compiler that's going to come later is also going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Good stuff. So we covered, I think, most of what you were here to talk about, right? Like you wanted to talk about some curve stuff, you wanted to talk about some resupply, some Viper. Anything else in that big rabbity brain of yours?
I don't know. No, I think we've covered a lot of, yeah, like a lot of the things that at least I've been working on or that I find interesting in the ecosystem lately. Um, if you've got
I know
other
we
people in the
Yeah, I
chat
know
have
we
got
keep having
questions.
the chat's been super quiet. Usually like this time of the day is like when crypto's really quiet because or maybe it's just because like you and I work on Curve, so like the Curve team that's like in Europe is kind of asleep right now.
Yeah, maybe everybody's got tariff fatigue after the last few days. They just can't take it anymore.
um But no, it's always good to hear your thoughts. We keep having this like talk that we're going to like organize some sort of like Viper like marathon where you get like a bunch of Viper builders to like do like a bunch of showcases about their projects. I'm still game if we can organize
I
it. It
think,
just
yeah,
seems
we
like we
definitely should do this. Like, there's a lot of super interesting things. Yeah, like from the history of Viper. I think if we could get Romana to come and talk about the work that he's been doing on formal verification, like he's a like like it's his vision and his project, and I think he'll be much more um uh, uh he'll be much better at explaining exactly what he sees for the future of formal verification, like on chain and for Viper, than I would. And yeah, like I think Charles would also be happy to come and talk about a lot of the new things that are being cooked in Viper. So yeah, let's get this done.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we'll talk offline about that, and I'm sure like once we send the call out, like put the bat signal, people will come.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Maybe I'm just gonna try also and paste the link to our Telegram for Viper. Like, if anybody is interested in getting some pointers on how to get started, or I don't know if you have it.
Yeah, let me pull that up because I just figured out how to get them on the stream here, right?
I've got it here.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, so we're always happy to onboard new devs, and then something that's going to be cool is the Llamas, the NFT project. Right, they've got a job board coming up. I think it's already live. But they've been talking to a number of projects and trying to get Viper jobs up on that job board. It's not quite there yet, but I think it's planned for the next couple of months to have like more just job offers using Viper on there. And so, like, if you're a new developer starting in the ecosystem and you're looking for work and you want to try out Viper, that job board, right, is going to have some offers pretty soon. And so we'll advertise it on Telegram. So if you want to just keep up to be updated on what job opportunities are available, then Telegram would be the way to go.
Excellent. How about you? If people want to get in touch with you, Mr. Benny Lada.
I'm on Twitter now. I created an account like right about the time I started, trying to get funding for Viper, just so that I could shill it. Like, my account is basically a Viper shill account. With every now and then, if I find something interesting in like Curve Analytics, I'll post about it. But I do have a Twitter account now. Let me just get the profile address here.
Yeah, it's just BENNYLADA. I'll go ahead and toss that on the screen too. Excellent, excellent. All right, we ended this with 400 some people
Nice.
watching, which is not bad considering that this is like past most of like crypto's bedtime. It seems like so. Very successful Llama Party. Now I know that some of you are disappointed that like usually Llama parties happen Friday morning our time. Don't worry, we're gonna have something going on tomorrow morning. It's gonna be very fun. So I will post about that on my Twitter feed. I'm sure you'll be able to see it. Other than that, friends, thank you so much for joining. Always great to get Benny. Like anytime, like just to get like interact with him in DMs, it's a pleasure. So to actually get like multiple hours of his time here is like a really, really great treat. Really appreciate you coming online and doing this. Come back anytime you like.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on here, be able to talk and shill the things that I care about. And yeah, thanks to all of the people who've tuned in and stayed until the end.
All right, squids, we'll catch you on the next tide.